the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hand Trap tier list for October 2022. Today, I'm going to be talking about what I think are the best hand traps for this format, and I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about these particular cards, if I rank them too high or if I rank them too low. It's really fun to be able to read you guys' comments, so let's go ahead and jump. This time around, guys, we have 5 different categories, S, A, B, C, and everybody's favorite, Arby's. To my Arby's defenders, guys, if you like meat in your mouth, just say that. We're not judging you. With that being said, let's go ahead and start off with this tier list. Artifact Lancia, you would think would be an amazing card in this format. Yep, it's Arby's. The problem with Artifact Lancia is that it can only prevent banishing on the opponent's turn. Yeah, that's not how Yu-Gi-Oh! Work no more.
It's no longer your turn. It's our turn.
In this current format, a lot of banishing, such as summoning the Bystial monsters and even using the runic cards, happen on your turn when you can't trigger the effect of Artifact Lancia. It's just not as an effective Yu-Gi-Oh! Card right now. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Oh man, this one's really tough because in the last format, Ash Blossom wasn't as great. I think we could say that Ash Blossom is in the B tier. It's a really solid card. It does have its flaws, but it's starting to increase in popularity. My personal opinion, I like Ash Blossom anytime when you can trait with a spell card that goes to the graveyard. We already know cards like Triple Tactics Talent will be played a little bit more because of the Bystials, but then there's also cards like Branded Fusion in the meta, and of course, anytime you can catch your opponent lacking and prevent them from adding their Runic Fountain to their hand, whether it's through Runic Tip or Runic Hugin, Ash Blossom is pretty good in that avenue. What I've never liked about Ash Blossom is using it on a card like Sprite Blue or Sprite Jet, or using it on a card like Tearlament Rhino Heart. Those feel really terrible because your opponent will just purpose them for other things. They still have monsters on the field. And that's what still rings true about Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. It is no longer a mandatory hand trap. It's fairly situational in the climate that we're in. The Bystial monsters making their debut. How do I feel about the Bystials? Ooh, okay, so the Bystials feel like S tier. They feel amazing. They feel almost unstoppable. But then once players start to realize how to play around these monsters, they feel really solid. What I have experienced with Bystial against Tearlament is actually favorable for now, until a couple of friends showed me this cool combo where they can fusion summon into Root Kalos to their side of the field, the new Tearlament monster, before they commit a monster on their field. In my opinion, that makes cards like Nibiru the Primal Being and the Bystial monsters a lot weaker, especially since in that same combo, they can also synchro summon into Belle de Fleur, which is a disruption and a prevention card for not only your Bystials, but also being able to stop Nibiru. With that being said, I do think that the Bystials are fairly strong, but I also think that players will respect these cards more and play around them, making them a little bit harder to be able to use their effects and gain as much advantage as they're gaining right now. Chaos Hunter doesn't feel like a terrible card. In theory, it does prevent decks like Bystial monsters from summoning themselves to the side of the field and Runic from being able to banish. Keep in mind, guys, if they cannot banish from their deck, they can't activate their spell cards, but it is, it's in between. It's probably here. Now, I hope that I'm wrong about this, but the reason why I put Chaos Hunter so low is because players are playing a lot more monsters or a lot more cards to be able to interact with this card and get it off the field. If you can summon Chaos Hunter to your side of the field and protect it, it can be a free dub against some of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you just summon it thinking that it itself is going to win you games, sometimes it can be a problem. Personally, I think that your hand trap shouldn't require any additional cards to be really good, and that's why I'm going to put it in C, though it could be better than C. Contact C sits in the Arby's tier for a couple of good reasons. The first one is that even though decks may not all be dark, they all play Dark the Dark Charmer as well as summon dark monsters to their side of the field, and you just gave them a free monster to link with. While links may not be the go-to mechanic right now, it's still being played well enough to make Contact C not a great card. It's also a level 6 monster, and players are still playing cards like Red Cartesia and Belle de Fleur. You could potentially just get synchroed off and get a disruption with this card if your opponent gives it to you. Players think that DD Crow is obsolete because of the Bystial cards, but I've seen time after time again that there were spots where the Bystial cards couldn't activate, like when your opponent doesn't have a monster on the field or just don't have the correct light or dark target. Keep in mind, DD Crow can activate regardless if your opponent has a monster on the field or not, and it can banish any type of card in your opponent's graveyard. That is still very viable and valuable inside of this format. Basically what I'm saying is that if you can't play the Bystials, then you probably should consider playing DD Crow, or if the Bystials aren't necessarily to your benefit, DD Crow is a very solid card. Dimensional Shifter is S tier. Do you like ending your opponent's turn? A well-timed Dimensional Shifter will win the game for you, but that's not really anything new. Droll and Logbird being in the A tier category is pretty new. Over the course of the weekend, I saw a ton of players main board Droll and Logbird, and they had pretty good reason. A lot of the top decks in Yu-Gi-Oh may not seem like it, but they search a lot. Tier Elements just got Tier Element Scream, Sprite has been playing Sprite Runic, the list goes on about all of these powerful decks that can search, and Droll and Logbird can essentially end their turn. Keep in mind, guys, if they're adding cards from their deck to their hand outside of their draw phase, you could potentially droll them. If decks in this format aren't necessarily searching, they're doing a lot of drawing. But you also have to remember, during that turn droll is activated, it prevents you from searching or drawing as well. Seen a lot of times where players activated droll and then tried to activate and resolve Bystial Magnamut's effect to search. Nuh-uh, don't do that to us. Effect Veiler is a really solid card. It's in a similar spot as Ash Blossom where it's fairly generic, and as opposed to Ash Blossom, it can negate the entire card's effect. The problem is that Effect Veiler often leaves the monster on the field, which means your opponent can do other things with it, which allows them to continue to keep playing. Fantastical Dragon Phantasme is in the Arby's tier, guys. Everyone playing Dark the Dark Charmer does not justify you playing Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. When we get into a Link format where Tri-Brigades reign supreme, then maybe we'll consider Fantastical Dragon Phantasme, but for right now, not really. I also think that this is one of the very few tier lists where Psyframe Gear Gamma is a B card. Now keep in mind, guys, being in the B tier is not bad. It's solid. B is solid. But there are tons of Yu-Gi-Oh cards in this particular format that activate in the graveyard, and Psyframe Gear Gamma can negate and destroy them, but the best part about Psyframe Gear Gamma is to be able to destroy and take away a resource from your opponent's field. Trading a Gamma for a graveyard effect never really feels good. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, I mean, a lot of people would put it here, but it's secretly a B tier card. Now, I wouldn't walk around with 3 copies of Ghost Ogre in my main deck, but it stops so many great situations. There's field spells like Perlino, it can get rid of Gigantic Sprite, which is pretty huge. If they don't have another Exceed monster on their field, then they won't be able to special summon. Ghost Ogre has a lot of applications and is secretly a fairly solid Yu-Gi-Oh card. The only problem is that it doesn't stop monster effects too. You could say this is meme. Seriously, you could say this is meme, but I would make a strong case for Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood to be S tier. Now, hear me out. This is not copium. This is actually strokium. We in there. The reason why I say Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood could legitimately be an S tier godlike sideboard card is because of the time rules. Almost every single Yu-Gi-Oh strategy has some type of win condition when going into time. Sprite has Red Resonator. You can have Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. And the reason why I love Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood is because when your opponent activates an effect to special summon, you're almost guaranteed to win when you activate this card going into time. A hand trap that valuable must be seriously looked at, and with the current time rules, everyone should have some sort of way to be able to gain or inflict damage. This is the best one available for hand traps. I don't think that Ghost Belle in Haunted Mansion is deserving of its C tier status, but there are a ton of question marks with this card despite players playing this card. My first and most biggest problem with Ghost Belle in Haunted Mansion is chain blocking. A smart tier limit player will always, and I mean always, make sure their tier limit monsters are the first part of the chain and other card effects are the second part of the chain. That can't always happen, but it does make this a lot less effective. There are players that are using Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood for the Bystial matchup. My guy! And while DD Crow can't banish your cards in the graveyard to prevent your opponent from summoning their Bystials, Ghost Belle in Haunted Mansion only delays the inevitable. Your opponent doesn't lose the Bystial monster, so unless you quickly come up with a solution, then you are going to lose the card on the very next turn. I do think if you're playing a high-paced, high-octane deck that can win games fairly quickly, what I just said does not matter. And overall, Ghost Belle does have so many applications, it can easily be B tier, but I think players will soon realize that there are better options than Ghost Belle and will react accordingly. Now, if you guys thought that Ghost Belle in Haunted Mansion was a really hot take to put it in C tier, I'm up. Boom. Ghost Mourner in Haunted Mansion is the best Ghost Girl card right now. That's a hot take. Now, this is 100% hopium. It should really be in the B tier, but I like rustling people's feathers, so I'm gonna put it in the A tier. The reason why I like Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, I feel like I called it Ghost Mourner in Haunted Mansion or something. Ghost Mourner in Haunted Mansion is the best Ghost Girl card right now. Is because this is the only hand trap that can negate monster effects on your turn while you control cards. That is huge. Being able to stop the effects of your runic monsters that your opponent special summons from the extra deck is huge. Being able to stop tier limit Kit Kalos on your turn, as well as a host of other fusion monsters they'll summon to the side of the field. And this card also still has time applications. It's not as good as Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, as your opponent could just not use the card for material, but if you start off going first and activate this card on an opponent's monster, now you know all you have to do is get rid of the threat and your opponent will take burn damage, which could essentially win you the game. Again, this is hopium. I'm putting it in an A tier as a bold take. It's genuinely a B tier, but I think once this format progresses, people will start to realize the power of Moonlit Chill. Even though I'm going to get the ultimate rares, Ghost Winter in Winter Cherries, Ghost Sister in Winter Cherries. She's C tier. This ain't a good Yu-Gi-Oh card, guys. A lot of players will disagree. They'll say that Ghost Sister in Winter Cherries takes away the opponent's best card, but unfortunately, there are a ton of best cards. This card to even a seemingly decent Yu-Gi-Oh player is more of an annoyance than a hindrance. It's fairly easy to play around and its stipulations to be able to activate it do not help you. Essentially, the later the game goes on, the worse that this card gets too. If they already use the card and you draw it later, it's not good. Same thing for Psyframe Gear Gamma. Herald of Orange Light is in that B tier. It's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh card, but you don't want to use this card to be able to negate the activation of graveyard effects. Soon, when Magnificent Mavens come out, this card will be amazing. And of course, we'll talk about that once Magnificent Mavens comes out, but until then, we're going to stick with Infinite Impermanence still being an A tier card. One of the very few cards that can dodge cards like Triple Tactics Talent and Call by the Grave, but also could be used to be able to negate your opponent's spell and trap cards as well. That comes up huge. I think I can go further and say that Infinite Impermanence should be considered by most as the best hand trap of all time. It's better than Ash Blossom. But I don't know, maybe you'll let me know what you think. Do you think that Ash Blossom is the best hand trap of all time, or you're gonna give it to Imperm? I'm Team Imperm. Heavenly Zephyr Miradora, it's not bad. Literally, the only thing that's saving this card is that you can search it with Bystial Magnum Hunt. We've seen a lot of players mainboard Nibiru. We've seen a lot of players sideboard Nibiru over the weekend. I think Nibiru is a solid B tier. The reason why I put Nibiru in the solid B tier is because when players don't respect Nibiru, it becomes an S tier Yu-Gi-Oh card. But as long as players respect Nibiru, like how tier limits are going to fusion summon into Ru Kalos first before anything, right? Then this card doesn't become as great as a Yu-Gi-Oh card. As far as the other Psyframe monsters, this was supposed to be Psyframe Epsilon to be able to stop Eradicator. Yeah, that's still not good. Bro, tier limit Ru Kalos prevents your Psyframes from negating your shit and summoning itself. Also, a lot of players are divided on their tier deck right now. Some of them aren't even playing Eradicator. Hey, I thought I was Big Brain, Big Jane for included in there, but yeah, don't play this card right now. Saravis, in my opinion, is a C tier Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's actually better if your deck can freely search this. So if you're playing a ritual-based deck or a deck that can send Herald of Arclight from the extra deck to the graveyard with ease and are looking for targets, Saravis prevents your opponent from targeting your monsters. That's kind of good. Skullmeister is at probably the best C tier. Could probably even be here, but I'm going to put it in the C tier. It's actually a fairly good card right now, being able to stop the tier limit spell and trap cards as well as their monster effects, and can have applications against some of the other decks that are really good. The problem with Skullmeister right now is that your opponent can chain block you. That's the problem. Lastly is Token Collector. Oh no, what are you doing, baby? Don't mainboard or sideboard Token Collector. Not a lot of players are playing tokens enough for you to justify mainboarding, but I guess if your area is consisting of a lot of Adventure Token or Sword Soul, you could consider siding it. And that is all that I have for my hand trap tier list. I really hope you enjoyed. Of course, if you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out these videos. I'll catch you on the next one, right? Click on them.